So quiz this week, much like assignment number 12. And then also and 4 PT problems, like assignment number 6. So just a really quick review. If I give you a triangle, I want the tangent of angle, let's do A. So A, B, C, we'll just do an easy one, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So I want the tangent of A. Remember your TOA, tangent is opposite over adjacent. This is opposite over adjacent. All I'm looking for is the ratio. So labeling your triangle, angle A, across from that is your opposite, hypotenuse, and adjacent. So your answer would simply be the tangent of A is equal to your opposite over adjacent, so 4 over 3, and you're done. That would be your answer. And remember to reduce if possible. Reduce if possible. Second would be to find, say, the decimal. So find the cosine of 24 degrees. So you're just going to put that in your calculator. (24) cosine, and take the first 4 numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a less than 5, so we're just going to truncate it at the 5. So we'll have 0.9135. Done. That's it. So if you're just joining us, we are doing a quick review of what's on the quiz for this week. And then if we wanted to find the angle, find angle. And I tell you that I've got the sine of angle A is equal to 0.2496. And I just made that up, so it might not actually be a very good example. Let me have to change it. So remember, when you're finding the angle, we need to use the shift, inverse, or second key. So we're going to put our decimal in, 0.2496, shift, and then sine. Or on a phone, you might have to do shift or second sign and then the decimal. Okay. Or shift sign and then the decimal. But in this case, we're going to go 0.2496, shift sign. Okay, now we get 14.45. That's closer to 14 degrees. And you're done. We're going to round it to the nearest whole. And on the quiz, it'll be easy to round to the nearest whole. Okay. Questions on that? We're going to get a lot of practice on that today, too. Okay. And then the last would be what we were doing yesterday, that part of the review. If we have a triangle, we have 30 degrees. This is 5, and that's X. Actually, I'm going to flip those. Let's make this X and this 5. Just for my purpose, for the review real quick. Okay, so tell me in the chat box, what trig ratio would you be using? Sine, cosine, or tangent? Sine, cosine, or tangent? Put it in the chat box. Sine, cosine, or tangent. Good. Nice. So far, so good. Okay, Brandon, go back and relabel those. See what you get. Everybody's doing really good. Nice. If you cannot properly identify which one of those to use, you will not get the answer correct. I don't care how hard you try if you don't use the right one. So circling my angle, there's my opposite, and there's my hypotenuse. I have no adjacent. Okay, so this is going to give me sine. I'm going to be using sine. So the sine of my angle, 30, is equal to x over 5. Go ahead and put your answer in the chat box. Round it to the nearest tenth. Changing that to decimal, we actually get 0.5. So we do 30 sine, and we just get 0.5. 0.5 equals x over 5. Multiplying both sides by 5. So those are cancel. So 0.5 times 5 is 2.5 equals x. And that would be your answer. Awesome. Okay. And then the Pythagorean theorem problems. PT problems from number 6. Assignment number 6 would look like the 6, 10, and X. And then call it 7, 7, and X. So let's do number 1 and number 2. We're just going to do this kind of quick. You can do them together, but make sure you know how to do them. You'd identify your hypotenuse, which is the slanted one. This is your hypotenuse. And we're using the formula a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So this is my c, and that's my c. So looking at your problem, you've got 6 squared plus x squared equals 10 squared. Go ahead and finish that and put your answer in the chat box. So going through the problem, solving as such. Okay, to get rid of a square, we're going to take a square root. And then we ask ourselves, does 64 have a nice square root? Like what times itself gives you 64? It's a square and a square, they cancel. So x is equal to 8. Good. Go ahead and work on number 2. And the directions on your quiz say to leave answers in radical form, no decimals. No decimals. Good. Some of you may recognize it, but I want you to have the practice of solving it. So we have 7 squared plus 7 squared equals x squared. Notice that the x squared is already over here all by itself. So we're going to square these and add them together. So 7 squared is 49 plus 49. 49 and 49 make 98 equal to x squared. I'll give you a chance to catch up. So going ahead and square rooting both sides, you can break down the 98. You see 2 times 49. And 49 is 7 times 7. So do you have a pair of 7s? Remember, your pair goes on the outside, the leftover goes on the inside. I'd have a 7 root 2 equals x. Does anybody need a more explanation on that? They should be review. This is like the first half of the assignment. There's only 2. Okay. And then the last 2 PT problems will be like, let me actually get them off the assignment real quick. So you'll have two PT problems similar to these. So I need to isolate the triangle to solve for x. So how big is this part down here? Anybody?
11.
11. Okay, because this is a rectangle on the inside. If the top is 11, the bottom is 11. So I need to know how big are these two over there on each side. So if we subtract 11 from 21, we get 10. But is this value 10? What do you think?
No,
No, why not?
because you have to divide 10 by 2.
Okay, so there's two parts, so we'd have to take that 10, okay, and divide it by 2. So each part is 5. Okay, and now we can solve our triangle. So we have 5x and 13. So we would have 5 squared plus x squared equals 13 squared. So 25 plus x squared equals 169. When we did these on the video, minus 25 on both sides. X squared equals 144. Square rooting both sides. What's the square root of 144, people?
12.
Oh, good. X equals 12. And that one's done. Okay. The key to problem number 25 is breaking it into a rectangle and a triangle. And to do that, you need to just drop it straight down. Okay. So if this top part is 5, this bottom part is 5, which just makes this part 6, because 11 minus 5 would be 6. This height is the same height as that over there. So we have a 6, an 8, and an x. You would have 6 squared plus 8 squared equals x squared. And I'm going to leave you that to solve because it's an easy one. Okay. And you should get x equals 10. But I don't want to take up our whole time just reviewing for the quiz. So let's go ahead and finish our notes for today. And then we'll do some, hopefully most of the problems. Okay. So we've been finding sides. This time we're going to find angles. So let's use trig to find angles of a triangle. Okay, so let's look at a few. Here is a triangle, and we are still using SOHCAHTOA. And we're still using the same format, but there's one thing that's a little different. Okay, so looking at this one, we've got, here's our angle, and it's going to be a question mark. We can just put an X. You can put an X, you can put a theta. We'll end up putting an X. And then this side is 46, and this side is 58. So we are still doing the same exact thing that we've been doing. It's not changing. The process of solving will be a little different, but the process of setting it up is still the same. There's my angle. It doesn't have a name. You can call it X, but opposite that angle that we're trying to find is still my opposite side. So I have an O. This is my H, my hypotenuse. And if you'll notice, I do not have an A. I have an O and an H. So am I going to be using tangent, cosine, or sine with an O and an H? You can put it in the chat box. You can just say it. Okay, good. Lots of you put it in the chat box. And everybody so far is correct. Okay, one more. An O and an H. Okay, good. Yeah, it is sine. Okay, because an O and an H is going to be sine. There's no A. So we're going to use the sine of our angle. We always have to have the angle, so we're going to call it X because that's what we're solving for. Is equal to, okay, so, but just remember, if you put so in the chat box, so is not the trig function. So is the quote way to help us remember which trig function. The S stands for sine. Okay, just a clarification. Okay, so the sine of X is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. So 46 over 58. That's our format. Now, look at the difference between what we did yesterday in review and what we have now. Before, we've had like the sine of 22, and we would convert this to a decimal. Well, I don't have that number to convert to a decimal, but I do have these two numbers that I can convert to a decimal. So the difference so far is instead of converting this to a decimal on the left, I'm going to convert this to a decimal on the right. Okay. So write that down. Convert to a decimal. So we're going to put it in our calculator. And we're going to say 46 divided by 58 equals. And you can just take the first four numbers. So we know that the sine of X is equal to 0.7931. You don't necessarily have to round it, just truncate it, it's fine. Now it looks like what we've done on our review, finding the angle. What's the special key that we have to use in order to find the angle? Somebody say it.
Shift.
Mhm. Shift, inverse, second key. Okay. So now that we have this problem, I'm going to use the shift inverse or sine, or sorry, not shift inverse or second key. So we're going to do 0.7931 shift sine, and we'll get our answer. So 0.7931 shift sine, and it comes up with 52.47. And we're just going to round it to the nearest one. The 0.47 is less than a half. So our answer, X is equal to 52 degrees, and you're done. Now that took a lot longer to explain it than it does to actually just do the problem. Let's try a few more. Okay, so let's do so here's my angle down here that I want to find. This is 22 and this is 48. So go ahead and put in the chat box, am I going to use sine, cosine, or tangent? Sine, cosine, or tangent? Okay, so when we start to label our triangle, we realize that there is no O, but there is an H and there is an A for adjacent and hypotenuse. So A and H is going to be my C, and C is for cosine. Nice. So we are going to use cosine. Cosine of x is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. Remember the ca is just how to set it up. It's not the trig function. Cosine is the trig function. Okay, adjacent, which is 22 over h, which is 48. Okay, change it to a decimal. So 22 divided by 48 equals, so the cosine of 45, sorry, cosine of x is equal to 0.4583. If you're using a handheld calculator, you can actually just leave that in there and hit shift cosine and you get your answer. We're going to round it up to 63 because it's closer to 63 than it is to 62. So your angle x is equal to 63 degrees and you're done. So this one's tricky only because of the orientation of your triangle. Here's my angle that I'm trying to find. This is 54. This is 41. Good. So tell me, is it going to be sine, cosine, or tangent? And put it in the chat box. Sine, cosine, or tangent. Remember SOHCAHTOA. So automatically, when it has no hypotenuse, it's automatically tangent. So let's go ahead and label the other sides. So here's my angle. This would be my O. This would be my H. And this would be my A. So we're looking at TOA. SOHCAHTOA. There's no H. So we have the tangent of our angle that we're looking for is equal to opposite over adjacent. So opposite is 54. Adjacent is 41. Putting this into our calculator, let's convert it to a decimal. It'll be bigger than 1 because the bigger number's on top. That's okay. Tangent usually has that sometimes. So we've got 54 divided by 41 equals 1.317. You can put 0 or you can put 1, either way. So the tangent of x, oh, facts, that was good. Tangent of x is equal to 1.317. I'm going to go ahead and put a 1 just because it's rounded. But if you put a 0, I'm fine with that because it's not going to change your overall answer. Okay. Remember our special key. I can hit shift, tangent. Is that number closer to 52 or 53? So that's going to determine your answer. Is it closer to 52 or 53? Good. Let me put it in the chat box. Nice. Because it's bigger than 0.5. Nice. Nice. Okay. So yes, your angle is going to be 53 degrees. And you're done. So let's go ahead and work on the assignment. We still have a good time left with that. Number 14. Number 1. So I think for most of my students, the part that's hardest is the orientation of the triangle. So our angle is going to be over here. We have 47 and 37. So if you can, if you see it right away, are you going to use sine, cosine, or tangent? Hopefully you're getting really comfortable at recognizing this one. Good. So if you see, is it sine, cosine, or tangent? You might even be able to see it without labeling your triangle because of the side that you're not given. Okay, good. Because the side that we're not given is H. We have no H. Anytime you have no H, it's automatically tangent. Okay. So we're going to use tangent. Let's go ahead and label our triangle. So this is my opposite. That would be my hypotenuse that we don't have. And this is my adjacent. So we know that the tangent of our angle, x, is equal to opposite over adjacent. So 37 over 47. Some of you might want me to do this on the phone just so you can see the difference as well. So let me do that. Okay. So I personally, if I was going to do this on my phone, I would go 37 divided by 47, and I would hit equals. So I would get 0.7872. So the tangent of x is equal to 0.7872. And then I would clear it. And then I need to use my inverse key. So inverse, and then tangent, and then 0.7872. And then you have to hit equals. Okay. And then we have to ask ourselves, is that closer to 38 or is it closer to 39? Because that's less than 5. Our x is equal to 38 degrees. And you're done. So hopefully this is getting a little bit easier. Let's do number 3. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and do the odds. And then if we have time, we'll go back and look at the evens. But I want you guys doing this with me. Okay. So number 3. Excuse me. So here's our angle down here. This side is 13. And this one is 51. So go ahead and put in the chat box. Are we going to use sine, cosine, or tangent? Sine, cosine, or tangent? Okay. So your angle is equal to 75. So cosine of x is 13 over 51 because we have cosine. Changing it to a decimal and hitting shift cosine, and you're done. Your angle is 75 degrees. Questions on that? You want to find the missing angle. So this over here would be my O. So there's no O. Here's my hypotenuse, and there's my adjacent. So I have an A and an H, which is ka, so ka toa. So that's cosine. So yes, I'm using cosine. So go ahead and solve. The cosine of my missing angle is equal to 15 over 23. Go ahead and solve and put your answer in the chat box. It's together. So once we set it up, we know we do not have an O. We have an A and an H. That's going to be our cosine. So if you don't know which one it's going to be, you're obviously not going to get the right answer. Okay. And then converting this to a decimal, we have 15 divided by 23 equals. So that means our cosine of x is equal to 0.6521 or 2. And then we're going to use our shift key. So we're going to do shift cosine because we chose cosine. And we have 49.29, but we're always going to round our degrees to our angle to the nearest whole degree. So that's closer to 49 than it is 50. So your x is equal to 49 degrees, and you're done. Number 7. Here's my angle, 44 and 58. Okay, so automatically know it's not going to be tangent because I have a hypotenuse. The side opposite my right angle is my hypotenuse. So I know it's not tangent. Now I just have to figure out, is it sine or is it cosine? Okay, good. So I do know it's going to be cosine. Cosine of my missing angle is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse, 44 over 58. Okay, go ahead and solve and put that answer in the chat box. Solve and put the answer in the chat box. So having a question, how do we put it into decimal? We're going to take that top number and divide it by the bottom number and hit equals. And that's how we get the decimal that we need. Then we're going to put it back into our calculator, or we're just going to leave it there and hit shift cosine or on a handheld, or on your phone calculator, you're going to hit shift or inverse cosine, and then that decimal, and then equals. Or if you have an iPhone, you're going to hit the decimal and then shift cosine. So there's not really only two ways to do it. You're either going to put in the number and then shift cosine, or shift cosine and then the number. And we can always figure it out together if you need. So on a non-iPhone, we'll hit inverse cosine, and then the decimal that we got, 0.7586, and you have to hit equals. And then you ask, is it closer to 40 or 41? And so we get our angle is equal to 41 degrees. Or x is equal to 41 degrees. Okay. Number 9. It seems like most of you are feeling a little more comfortable with this. And that's awesome. So number 9. Here's my right angle. This side is 40. This side is 82. And here's the angle I'm trying to find. So put in the chat box, am I going to use sine, cosine, or tangent? Sine, cosine, or tangent? Okay. Nice. A lot of you popped that in really quick. Nice. Good, Levi. Okay. Jackie, I know it's a little harder to see because of the way the triangle's sitting, but look at the side that we don't have. Okay, look at the side that we don't have. We don't have the one opposite the right angle, which is the H. We have no H. Okay, when we have no H, we're always going to use tangent. So here's my angle. This one would be my opposite, although it does kind of look like it might be a hypotenuse, but it's not. Okay, good, Brandon. And then this would be my A. So we're going to use TOA. SOHCA, TOA. TOA is for tangent. I have the tangent of my angle that I need to find. Is equal to my opposite, 82, over my adjacent of 40. And then we solve. Go ahead and solve that and put your answer in the chat box. Okay, so let me do that again, just for people that may still be working on it. After I get my 2.05, I'm going to divide those. I'm going to hit inverse tangent, and it needs to have the -1, because that's my second or inverse shift. And then I'm going to put in my decimal, 2.05, and hit equals. And ask myself, is that a 63 or a 64? And so it was 64. Questions on that one? We are nearing the end of our time. If you are still struggling, I'd encourage you to stay with me for just a minute.